Hey everyone, my name is Christoph Young. I'm a character concept artist, illustrator, and art teacher. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are working on some portrait studies. This is the third video that I'm doing in collaboration with Studio Grafit. So they very kindly created an awesome custom ref pack for me that's focused more on character design and character illustration. So in this video, I'll be doing some portrait studies. Um, the ref pack has a variety of kind of categories of poses. So there's some full body poses, uh, some poses that are more focused on like the upper body, so more like torso shots, and a little bit more like intimate bust poses. So in this video, I just picked out a couple portraits that I really like from the pack, and I'll be doing some kind of structure drawings and really just focusing on conveying the form and the proportions of the face. Not trying too hard to capture likeness, but if I do this accurately, I should be able to capture some kind of likeness to the portrait. But I'm more focused really on just creating an appealing portrait, so something that sits well design-wise and that looks, three-dimensional. And so yeah, let's jump into it. So I always start off by just building a sort of generic head mask. I like to use the Loomis method, something similar to the Loomis method, to kind of carve out the main shapes of the skull. I think that the most important part of the Loomis method is really capturing the angle of the kind of cheekbone. So besides just establishing the main silhouette of the head, having that line running across the cheeks, and then having it drop down to give us like the width of the chin and the mouth. I think that's a really important defining feature in a lot of faces, because having high or low cheekbones can really change the portrait. And then making sure that the sort of front plane of the head, so where the forehead kind of cuts into the sort of cavity where the eyes sit, and then kind of is pushed out a little bit towards the nose, and then kind of wraps down to the chin. So defining that frontal plane where most of the features are going to be sitting in is also really important. So making sure that the eye line is at the right height, making sure that the forehead and the bottom of the nose and the center line for the mouth are kind of separated by the proper distances is important. And once those are in to the main drawing, it becomes a lot easier to put in the volumes and kind of inserting the features, so the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the ears, kind of slapping them onto that head shape that's a little bit more generic, and kind of inserting them into the skull like small sculptures that sit on the face. So yeah, so we're not going to linger too long on one specific portrait. I'm not going to go into shading or any kind of rendering. I'm just going to focus on the drawing part so I can get through a couple of them. But yeah, so once I have most of the features in, I can then work on kind of cleaning up the drawing, maybe adding some line weight, and then looking more at establishing the likeness so that all the shapes are where I want them to be. So I'll just turn that into a smart object so that I can scale it back again, and let's start another one. So I'm focusing on heads that are turned and rotated in perspective, so that I can work on my head construction from different angles, as opposed to just working from one angle over and over. So just to challenge myself, I warm up with a head that's just in a simple 3/4 view, but now I'm looking at a bit more of a challenging head with it tilted up. So I now need to kind of rotate that sort of generic head volume, or that Loomis head, in space, so that the eyes are kind of angled up, and the whole frontal plane of the face is angled upward. And yeah, kind of try to get away from the muscle memory I have of drawing heads, either like front on or in profile or the 3/4 view, which is where we see most portraits. They're generally, we see people at eye level, so we don't often practice heads that are like tilting dramatically upward or downward. But for this kind of practice session, just picking some more challenging heads so I can practice plotting all those forms out. Here you can see the way I construct the volume of the nose. I think the nose is a really defining feature of the face, and depending how big it is, it can kind of it breaks up the face as like a big structure that's protruding off the frontal plane. So I like to start with the nose, and that kind of extrusion, like extruding that form out of the face, kind of gives me almost like small valleys in the form of the face, where I can start plotting, the eyes and the mouth that are a little bit more recessed. So I'm trying to kind of find the outermost parts of the face before looking at the cavities. And so I've been using that strategy a little bit more when constructing portraits these days, and I think it's been helping me especially deal with overlaps, because often in angles like this, you'll get quite significant overlaps between the volume of the nose and the eye on the far side of the head. Or sometimes, if the portrait's facing downward, you'll see the tip of the nose kind of overlap the mouth. So by starting with the nose, you can, quickly establish where that big volume is so that you can more easily draw the overlaps. I know a lot of people like starting with the eyes, because the eyes are kind of, the kind of focal point of a head or a portrait. They're just the windows to the soul, I guess. So we tend to start with the eyes, but that can be kind of a trap where you might draw some pretty eyes, but then you don't. It's really hard to shape a whole head or a whole body for that matter just around the eyes. So I think working from the outside in and working from the big shapes to the small shapes is always important. The nose is just a more prominent shape on the front of the face. So here we're kind of in those finalization steps. So working on the smaller details like the irises, getting the gaze to sit properly. So just trying to capture a little bit of the way she's looking at the camera. And then here I'm just working on some small details, so refining the nostrils, refining the lips, and the little junctions there, the little overlaps of flesh, and kind of finding where the kind of surface anatomy is popping through, little fat pads and little parts of cartilage and stuff. So really looking in at the details to make that that portrait more believable. Also for these drawings, I try to keep all my construction lines in my final sketch. I not only think that there's a really nice aesthetic to it, but it helps me kind of like believe that I'm working on a 3D form. Like it gives me the illusion of some sort of surface. If I don't have any lines on the canvas, you're working on a blank canvas, so I find it harder to visualize the form when there's nothing on the canvas. So whenever I'm working on kind of sculpting out a sketch or a design, I keep all my scribble lines, even if they're just really, really, really low opacity. So I tend to, draw in some lines, and you can see I'm working back and forth between my brush and my eraser. And every time I erase, I always erase only to 90%, so I'll keep just the faintest remains of the attempt at the sketch that I was trying. But those lines are always going to be in the drawing kind of in a ghostly, very low opacity sort of way. So here again, starting with the the nose, and just, here we have a, a big overlap between the volume of the nose and the cheek. So putting the nose in early kind of helps me visualize those forms. And I also like to draw some shoulders when I do portrait studies. So just drawing the head can, reveal quite a bit about the emotion, but I find a lot of the emotion is captured in the relationship between the head and the shoulders. So you can have a head that looks really confident, but then if you bring the shoulders in and the shoulders are kind of slouched forward, it can give the whole character like a different kind of attitude. So a lot is conveyed in the posture of a character, and to just throw in a line for the shoulders, it really gives context to the portrait, and a lot more kind of appeal to the whole thing. So that's often why, in sculptures of busts, we often see, the neck, the traps, and the connection to the shoulders, and not just a head kind of severed at the neck. So so I find that, it gives context to the angle of the head and the whole pose, and kind of indicates what is happening in the rest of the image, right? It kind of gives us a little bit of a bridge to our imagination to think of what's happening with the rest of the character's body. So now just cleaning up the drawing, adding some line weight. I also want to focus on keeping the quality of my lines consistent throughout the whole drawing. So I'm not skimping on like the shoulders or the hair. I might indicate things more, but I won't leave any part of the drawing in like a much rougher sketch stage, just so that the whole sketch feels worked on to a similar degree. And it just, I find it creates, a nicer aesthetic. And at the end of the day, I'm just drawing shapes everywhere. So it doesn't really matter if I'm drawing an eye, or I'm drawing, a strap on a shirt, or a shoulder. Like, they all kind of, I treat them all with the same amount of care and importance. And there we go. We'll put some finishing touches, and that'll be it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this shorter form video, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.